And Carl's going to give us a talk about 2-meter aspects that many of us may not be familiar with. So Carl. Okay, Carl.
Hello.
F6J.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I've got some stuff over here, including a kid under the table. We're going to auction him off at the end of the meeting. But wanted to show you a couple of things, just some talk about antennas. I was going to bring some gigantic antennas in, but this is my satellite antenna, and I want you to just look at the 3 elements.
Right in the center.
In the center, okay.
Right there, stop.
That's good.
In front of the computer.
Oh, yes. This is what would be an Arrow satellite antenna. It's got 3 elements on 2 meters and a bunch of elements on 432. This particular one is built out of brass. It uses the cheap Yagi information, which is up on the Yahoo group, and this outperforms the, I forget what they call it, but it's the Arrow antenna. It outperforms the Arrow antenna on both 2 meters and 432, and it only cost me about 28 bucks to make it, plus time. So 2 meters is what we're going to be talking about, and we have a different antenna, crunch, and the different antenna, I'll disconnect this. Sorry. It has a magnet, so I won't put it on the computer. But this is what's known as a whole loop. It's made by M Squared in Fresno, and you can stack these things at home. They're horizontally polarized, but this thing on top of my Jeep works just as well with FM as it does with the sideband. Now on sideband using this, I can talk to my nephew in Mountain View all the way down, all the way back on 25 watts mobile. And this is my own mag mount contraption.
That's on 2 meters, Carl?
2 meters. And Greg brought some other antennas in here. We'll talk about these. This I'll hand it around. This is a handmade ground plane, and you can guess what the frequency is on that. And then he also has 2 good antennas here in some of his satellite work, which he's going to talk to us on. And this is known as a helix because it's got the concentric circle-like with the back part, and probably has some pretty good gain. And this is on 2.4, so that's 2.4 gigahertz. I'm not going to pass it around. And then for Greg and myself in satellite work, he brought in a 430. Notice it has vertical and horizontal driven elements and other elements.
Move over.
Ah, sorry.
Camera. Stop.
For the camera. This is Greg's antenna, and it has vertical and horizontal elements. This is a switcher box to switch polarity from right hand to left hand circularization. Keep hitting the mic on that. And so you have these with a 2 meter version, and you have them set up so that you can track the satellites, both angular and azimuth. So what we're going to talk about, this is a handout that I'll give to you. Please pass along. This is all the links that are at the end of this. And what I'm talking here, 2 meters beyond repeaters in FM. We all work FM, we all talk to each other, do all kinds of things. However, there's just so much more. Satellite is one of the aspects. You can listen to the downlink on the satellite very easily on your FM rig because it's FM. But there's all kinds of other stuff that you can do. And let me just move this along. I just have this for Larry Hogue, W6OMF, who's no longer with us. He was a kind of the pioneer of the SWAT group in Northern California, and he ran the Thursday and Sunday night nets. And we would talk to people, and then towards the end of the net, we would talk to the people in Los Angeles. Gordy, WB608, that a lot of people know, and that group down there. So somebody asked me, they said, when you were working with a beam, I'm talking 15 element Cushcraft, horizontally polarized, at 50 feet, running 100 watts, I've been able to contact on a regular basis, talk to Los Angeles and talk way up north, talk over to Reno and some spots. But when different propagation comes, and the propagation allows it to go further distances, you can even talk across the country in different places on 2 meter sideband. And that's what we're going to talk about. This is ICOM's VHF band plan. And back to just what I sort of started talking about, you know, what makes a 2 meter sideband guy? And it's all these different things. You have to have the equipment. You have to have an all-mode rake, which there's a lot of portable and mobile all-mode rakes, and a lot of base station all-mode rakes. When I say that, I mean it's sideband plus AM, not AM, but FM, CW, and sideband. And I like this one because it says, who gets into this? And it's by pure accident. You've come to a thing like this and you've heard me talk about it. You've gone to a friend's place and heard him working, you know, Missouri on 2 meters. And you have to have an interest in satellites, which Greg will cover at another session. All these different things. Telecommunications background, I don't think you need that. And what they're saying, it's not for everybody. And I'll demonstrate. I disconnected the antenna, but this, that's the 2 meter sideband calling frequency, 144.2. And if you turn it on and don't adjust the squelch, that's what it sounds like most of the time. But in the evening when people get home from work and they want to do something, what you find is people get on there, put out a CQ, and you can talk for hours. And if the band opens up, it's a whole different story. Okay, so the rules. The calling frequency 144.2 that we just heard, CW below 144.1, Earth, Moon, Earth, that's what EME is, not CW, but it's usually digital now. Meteor Scatter, PSK 31 and other digital modes, sideband 144, 175 to 275, and most of the nets on 2 meters are 144, 250, and the SWAT net is the one. Then there's beacons, and what the beacons do, a lot of hams have put up beacons, and you have a list and you can tell what the propagation is between here and Fresno and here and Reno and here north, south. And what happens is it gives you the indication, if you can hear them, that you could probably talk to somebody at that distance also. And we'll talk about that. Popular rates, these are Kenwood and ICOM, and I have IC7000, I guess that's an IC7000. But these are mobile and base rigs that have sideband capabilities. And then in older stuff, the one on the bottom right is what's sitting over here, my 2 meter sideband mobile rig. And then the other rigs are also, the one on the top is a 2 meter only. The other two, the big one in particular, there we go. This one right here, there's a lot of them out there for sale. They're great to get a hold of. They have boards that plug in. They can do satellite and they can do all the different bands, plus HF. Here's some other stuff. I went backwards, didn't I? There we go. And then antennas. We just kind of went over the antennas. And there's different things. This is what I just showed you. And this is a 6 meter version. This over here, this is a PAR Basically, it's a folded dipole, and it works very well. It's for 6 meters. This one down here is called a squalo. It's a similar design as the Holu. Good for mobile and good stacked for your location. And this one you can't see too much. There's all kinds of antennas up in the air there. And this is all for working sideband. And if we say the best antenna is the Yagi, the longer the Yagi, not so much how many elements, it's how long and wavelengths the boom is, gives you more gain. And the bigger the better. However, if it gets too big, it focuses very narrow with the beam pattern. And I may be talking to him, but I can't hear this guy over here. So there's a compromise. And what most people do is they stack them either one over the other, or they put them in an H pattern. And you use shorter Yagis that have the wider beam, and you put the 4 of them together, and you get a 6 dB gain over the single one, and you still get that very wide pattern. And that's the preferred thing to do unless you're doing serious moon balance. And what we have here in the upper left is advanced receiver research. That's an FET amplifier to boost your signal. If you're very serious, you have it up at the antenna, and you have a sequencer that shorts it out when you put RF up there, and it turns things on and off down below. There's a Mirage amplifier. You can buy solid-state 2-meter amplifiers now up to 1,500 watts. So if you have one of the rigs like this that does 25-watt sideband, you can hook it into the 1,500 watts 2-meter solid-state and have a real big signal. Now this is what this is, the holy grail, the quest for VUCC. When we talk about VHF and UHF, we talk about V and U. So the VU is VHF, UHF, and the CC for the club is confirming grid squares. And if you get 100 grid squares in the country, can be on all the different bands, but it's good to have it on one singular band. And you confirm the grid squares by getting the confirming QSL and talking to very good ham, Bob Wortman, who is the ARRL contact for confirming contacts. And you can get yourself a VUCC certificate and a listing in QST. And I've got the big version of that in back of me, and that'll be part of the giveaways at the end of this talk. Now this picture, originally I've modified the talk, but this was a guy that was in Texas. And just to give you an idea, he was here where that dot is, and he's working 2 meters, and all the X out squares gives you an idea of where he was and how far he was able to talk on 2-meter sideband. And people say, what? The West Coast, Florida, stuff like that. And let me get a little closer. I'll tell you, I have contacted Vancouver Island, down into the Baja Peninsula. My furthest east was here. I've worked some Texas, some Louisiana. I've worked up in this area. When I look back east, I had almost the whole part of that country put together. And my furthest west was Hawaii. And that was on sideband. Depending on conditions on the band, people like Jerry, W6GU in the back corner, he worked Hawaii on FM. It was a ducting tropo type of thing that was set up, and a lot of people got a lot of DX on FM. Okay, so here we are, back to propagation. We have Earth, Moon, Earth. You beep your signal out, pulse, and 3 seconds later you hear a weaker version of the pulse coming back to you. Aurora is not so good for us here. You have to be living in the east or the northern part of the country. And when we get a lot of ionization, you see the dancing lights, the aurora in the sky. You can actually bounce your signal off of that, use it as a big reflector in the sky, and make long-distance contacts. Meteor scatter, you get a meteor that goes through, and it leaves a bunch of particles, and for half a minute, 2 minutes, you can bounce your signal off of that also, and work further out. Then a sporadic E-skip and FAI. FAI is kind of misunderstood, but E-skip, or sporadic E as it's called, very common on 6 meters, where you get a single hop or a double hop. You might talk into South America. Some people have talked to England. Usually it's talked to Florida and the eastern people, and into Hawaii on 6 meters or 2 meters. And then tropospheric or tropospheric ducting, better known as tropo. Now, I don't want to get into too many technical things here. I'll keep it fairly simple. If I can operate this computer, this, now if I hit this button, will that select it?
Yeah, the right,
Right bottom one of the trackpad?
this is,
Okay, I'm pointing to this and I want to have the audio file come on. Just have to click on them and they autoplay, except on a PC. All right, well that's the heart of the talk. I have several different things showing what people talk about and where they're going. Earth, Moon, Earth. This shows 4 big antennas in a stack, and you pulse or CW, or now everybody's using digital modes, and you go bloop, bloop, bloop with a burst, and 3 seconds later, bloop, 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 it comes back. And you can think of, the moon coming up and the angulations. Your signal bounces in many different places, so you can work a lot of people all over the place. And that's digital signals down in the bottom left. And this was Aurora that I was talking about. But Aurora, my first Aurora was when I was in upstate New York, and the Canadians operated FM, and the rest of us in New York were on AM back in those days. And it was very interesting because I heard this guy calling CQ a VE2, and I thought, man, there's something wrong with this rig. And it wasn't. He was bouncing off the Aurora. And it's a very interesting sound. And I'm sorry I can't give it to you here. But that's a fun thing to do. Now this...
Send me the file and I'll try to include it in the video.
This is the same thing, okay. I don't know what I'm doing there, but this is an actual video of the sun showing different projections that come off the sun, and they, depending on the angulation to the earth, come at us and cause our magnetic sphere to do different things, and that's how the aurora starts. Something that was very interesting was when the shuttles first went up and we got the ISS, and before that Mir, they saw the lightning and the aurora in the atmosphere, and they're way above it. And they have red and green sprites, is what they called it. And even though we might be looking at yellow-green on the ground, there's red and yellow and all kinds of other activity going above it. Same thing for the lightning. And we don't see lightning other than the big blue flash. But above that, there's a lot of activity. So it'd be interesting when we learn more about it. So I'm not going to, all these different things have links. They're on that page. I'm not going to bore you with graphs and things. This is Meteor Scatter that I talked about. And you can see in the picture, it's when you can visibly see things. Yes?
When you're working auroras, how long a time do you normally have?
Hours. When aurora happens, it's visible in the sky, and you see it all during the night into the next morning. it's still there even though you don't see it the next day.
As you described it, it was like a reflector, but does that
It's like-
reflector change angles?
Yeah, it's like a big curtain, but it sometimes has undulations and that. And when I'm bouncing off of here, and I think that I'm going to talk back to the coffee stand, if it changes, I'll get people from other positions. So it's a variable reflector, but very interesting to use. And here's more stuff, the fact that people are using the digital now, rather than trying to talk or trying to send CW for doing that. And then the ducting or tropospheric E, and this is the atmospheric conditions. And again, I apologize for not being able to let you listen to all these clips. That was the main part of the pitch here. But basically, sporadic E usually happens in the summertime. And one of the things down here, it says, turn on your TV and watch the channels. Well, now that we have digital TV, you can't see stuff going like the old analog days. So you need to listen to your FM band. And if the FM band is going and you hear different signals, then the bands are probably open.
If you have an SDR, you can see the noise level come up
Correct.
in the TV bands, even though you can't get enough signal to lock them anymore. You can definitely see that noise come up.
Correct. And an SDR, you have your waterfall display and you have a display of frequencies up to down. And you start seeing what's coming in. And you can pretty well tell when the band starts to open. You start seeing all these other different signals. And you go, ooh, and you turn around and you hear different call signs from other places than Six Land. And it becomes very interesting. So I'm not going to bore you with all the rest of that stuff. We'll move along. There's more stuff with more contacts and audio. And basically, this says about TV channels again.
I wonder if we take it out of the display and put it back in the PowerPoint, if it would play the audio there.
Well, when I get done shortly here, we can go audio files. We'll just play the files. Okay, more sporadic E. I don't want to put you to sleep with sporadic E. And they're talking about some old records, 1987 records. But if you look in the back of QST, there's the above 50 megahertz column, all about VHF. And what fascinates me is that as we have better receivers, better transmitters, better antennas, and more people doing this, all of a sudden you'll see these grid squares like this, and all these red lines going radial out from where they've had E-skip or good conditions, and people are making 200, 400, 800, 1600 mile contacts. And you gotta be there. I mean, I tuned into a net one night and the guys said to me, they said, oh, we didn't hear you on. We were talking to, northern, what was it? They were talking in VE land from the west coast up to Canada, around Toronto. And I totally missed it. I could hardly work across the street on 2 meters when I got on. So I'm not going to talk about FAI. Now, Tropo is interesting stuff, and you can read all the stuff it says there, but basically it's weather conditions, and you have to become kind of a meteorologist, and you look at the different things on those links. You can bring up space weather, you can bring up local radar, and you can look at different activities that will give you an idea of what's going to happen. These graphs aren't too good, but you hear the isobars and different things and all that talk when the weather person comes out and where the trend is through there. And you have hot and cold fronts that come together, which produce all those storms that they're getting in the, through Louisiana on up through the central states. And it all becomes weather related. and you get a change in temperature, you get an inversion, you get any type of weather dynamic, and the band opens up and your signal actually goes through like a tunnel or a tropo, if you will. Types of tropo, line of sight, ground wave, can do that all the time. Tropospheric scatter, it's when you start seeing all kinds of echoes in the map on the weather person's pitch at night. Tropospheric enhancement, which is the temperature differences, and it's like it's some big front goes from the Gulf of Mexico up to Maine, and there's another front right in back of it that's coming in over the mountains. The differential will cause a whole area to open up. You'll have people in Maine talking to Cuba, and South America talking to Florida, and everybody talking to each other on the East Coast. And that happens out here too. This is sort of what I was talking about. The kind of can ignore that. That was the guy at Fort Worth. But here's a weather bar thing. And what happens, if we could see this clearer, this whole area here turned into being a tropo layer. And you could talk to people all over the place, north, south, and east, west. This was, there's been better openings since then, but this was an opening back in 2003 where weather conditions got to the point where you could just practically talk to everybody every place. And this is the event. And it shows, again, without boring you with this stuff, it shows all the weather mapping systems to give you an idea where you could talk. And so, I'm sorry I don't have the audio. We'll play audio clips in just a second. And just want to pitch for SWAT, Sidewinders on 2. It's an organization that got started a long time ago in the early 70s, and we've got over 4,000 members, $6 a year to belong to it. There's nets across the country. The Northern California net is at 8 o'clock at 144, 250 sideband, and we get up to 50 or 60 people to check in. So that's the net to be on. And just to give you the rest of this, these are links and different information that are on the handout. And what they're talking about is you get a number, like I had on my opening slide, and that number stays with you for the rest of your hand life, and that's a SWAT number. And we switch the numbers, but it's not necessary to swap your SWAT numbers. Making the contact and getting the QSL card is what's important. And that's a listing of nets, which there's a link on there that you'll be able to get to. And this pitch will be put up on the website so that you'll be able to take a look at it. And don't forget to pick up a link sheet and look for the pitch on the website. And this is the link, some of the links that are on that page. And I'm going to entertain questions right now. Or we'll go through the audio clips, if Al would help me.
Introduce the clip.
Thank you. Just think that it's a lot of fun. If your rig happens to be able to do sideband on 2 meters, you have a whole new world opening up.
Lower or upper sideband, Charles?
Yes, it's upper. You know, there's, as you go through HF and you come up to there, it goes from lower to upper and it stays upper all the way.
What is the reason that you use horizontal polarization instead of vertical?
Well, it's the same thing like if you have a dipole versus a vertical on HF, all the atmospheric noise gets cut down when you're horizontal. And everybody started using horizontal, and you can work somebody who's vertical. In fact, the big guns that do the nets, they have so many elements up in the air, and they can hear you no matter what you've got. But like my little halo here, the whole loop, I can put that on the car and I can operate on FM on the repeaters and everything just as well as if I had my vertical, which is there.
Once a signal gets in the tropo or hits off the aurora or whatever, does it become twisted, the polarity?
Yeah, aurora and meteor scatter, it'll change and it just gives you a different sound.
So do you have things that you can track the polarity, or?
No, you don't track the polarity. Polarity comes in when you're doing satellite work where you have circular polarization clockwise and counterclockwise. Otherwise, you just get what you get.
But you could improve your
Well, there's
signal
no-
to noise by,
But it changes.
It-
It's random.
so
Yeah.
it's just constant.
Yeah, the water sounds, it's very distorted, warbly signal sound. Once you've heard it, you recognize it
Yeah.
right away. That's why I think
It's
you want to.
bouncing off the screen, coming
Yeah.
back. Bob?
Carl, you know, a couple of years ago, I tried kind of getting into 2-meter sideband, and what I found was, other than that net, there's never anything going on. I mean, you get on there, call CQ, there's
Right.
nobody around.
Right.
There's a group of guys in Sacramento that were doing it, you know, and a couple of guys in the Bay Area.
Right.
But
You know, 2 meters is a lonely band. When it opens up, everybody and his brother is there. But you take a contest. We have the June VHF QSL party coming up pretty soon. Everybody goes out mountain topping. And even though you've got, you know, a huge 2-meter band, everybody's plus or minus a couple kilohertz at 144.2 calling frequency. And so you'll hear people say things like up 5, up 10, down 5, down 10. You get off of the crowd so that you can communicate. Okay, so we'll break at this point because I'm done and I don't think we can run the audio. If Val comes up with it, we'll start playing it in the background. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl.